In this video, we want to talk about conflict dialogue and conflict resolution. Now, we've been setting you up, we've talked about negative communication styles, and we've talked about forgiveness, but now we want to talk about how do you continue to move forward. And before we can go any further, we need to talk about what there are two different types of conflict. There's resolvable conflict and there's managed conflict. Now, a resolvable conflict is we need $300 more in our account. We can find a way to do that. We can resolve that issue. However, I cannot resolve the fact maybe that my partner, my spouse, likes to spend a lot of money and I don't. And so I want to resolve her not wanting to spend so much money. I can't resolve that. That's managed conflict.
In fact, anything about personality is going to be managed because you can't fix someone's personality. And
even though you may try.
Yeah, keep on trying.
No, don't keep on trying.
Are not resolvable. Also, another example would be long-term illness. Long-term illness is not resolvable. It is managed. We need to figure out how we're going to cope with this, but we can't change it.
And I think that's one of the big things we want to talk about is understanding these differences. Because if you're trying to resolve everything, you're going to get really, really frustrated and it's going to seem very fruitless because you can't resolve some things. But as Abigail said, you can manage them. And that's what we want to be able to help you do in this video.
Conflict dialogue are some simple, this whole process is just some simple steps that we want you guys to follow. You can print this PDF, make extra copies of it, and use it anytime on resolvable and managed conflict. First of all, you're going to set a time to meet and even where to meet, and you're going to pray about that meeting. Also, you're going to both write down what you perceive the issue to be. Now, this is critical because when you meet to talk about it, you want to make sure that you're both moving forward in this process on exactly the same issue. We have seen some couples come at it from their own perspective, so they're then solving for slightly different issues, which you can only imagine is going to set you up for failure.
Now, I also want to go back to the idea of setting a meeting time. A few sessions ago, we started talking about the 3 Ps and the formula. And that's an initial conversation, right? That's that, hey, we've got an issue. And then there probably was a follow-up conversation, there should have been, at a specific time and place, and it probably was not what we're talking about right now. That was to better understand the issue, using your active listening, going back and forth. Now, once you understand what the issue is, now you're going to come back and you're going to set another time to actually talk about this. So this is probably the third conversation talking about a specific issue.
And this is the one where you're going to actually be working together towards something. The one before this that Scott was just mentioning is that seek to understand conversation, where you're using a lot of active listening and you're not really trying to resolve anything. You're just trying to understand more completely where your spouse is coming from and communicate very effectively where you're coming from. That way you're set up for this conflict dialogue and you've gotten that stuff out. You really can't move forward with this process until you've had that conversation. So please do that because you won't be ready to actually solve it and move forward with some solutions if you haven't gotten all that out.
Now, you mentioned writing down. Step number 2 is writing down what the issue is. Why? I mean, can't you just share it? I'm setting her up.
As soon as you write it down, you are more careful with your word choice and you really think through what it is you want to say. And this becomes a little bit of a semantic issue. It does, because words mean different things to different people and the order in which you put it is very powerful. So you really need to get to the nitty-gritty. We cannot tell you enough. We want you to be in the same car driving down the road. And if you are solving for different issues, it's like you're in 2 different cars trying to stay together, and it's incredibly difficult to do. So write it down. And then you can read it to each other or let the other person read it. And then you can really be sure that you're getting on the same page.
That's truly it. Because we have seen so many couples that are basically trying to solve 2 different issues. And when we have them write it down and they say, well, no, here's what I'm solving. They're like, well, that's not my issue.
For example, one of my favorite things that you've said is the idea of solving for getting $300 more a month to bridge the gap or cutting the budget by $300. If one of you is working on cutting the budget by $300 and the other is thinking, how can we raise $300 more or earn $300 more per month? Those are 2 totally different solutions. You're coming to the table with your specific solution versus Broader.
So you have a very specific issue versus the broader issue of we need to find a way to have $300 going someplace. And it could be either one of those. In fact, it could be a combination. And so being broader allows for both people to be involved and actually prevents that conflict.
So one of my favorites is the next step is you're going to own what you can own. How have you contributed to the problem? This isn't where you jump in with how you have contributed to the problem, but it's saying, how have I contributed? I want to recognize that I haven't really paid attention to this issue as much as I should have, or maybe I've been doing this one thing that really makes it a little bit hairier. Whatever it is that I can own, I want to own it. And that automatically puts us better on that team nature.
Well, and we'll go back to the finances because a lot of couples do struggle with finances, and somebody may say, "Well, I'm the one that keeps the budget. I'm the one that saw there was $300 shortfall, so I haven't contributed because I don't spend that much money." But one of the ways you've contributed is you've seen it. You see it as an issue. Now that's not bad, and we're not saying that it's bad the way each have contributed, but it's important to recognize, okay, we're in this together. And so I may be the one that initially saw it, but I do see it as a conflict. And I may be the one that didn't see it. And so that's how I see it. And that's how I contribute to it being a conflict.
Now, next you want to go down negative memory lane for just a short time. Because you just want to recognize what you've tried before that hasn't worked. And the purpose of doing that is so that you cannot try those things again. Stop beating your head against the wall, doing the things that didn't work. Just say, okay, well, we tried, like say one of you is on their phone too long. Okay, we've tried setting a timer. We've tried making it only on certain days of the week. Or we've tried an app that monitors it, whatever. Well, you want to just say what all those things are so that you don't try to repeat those. Those will not be your new solutions.
And you want to keep it about things that you've introduced, right? Well, you've tried to make me not be on my phone, or you've tried to make me. Those, again, are very negative, and it's going to set up a defensive pattern where you need the opposite. You need a very open communication. And so by saying, here's what I've tried, and I know this hasn't worked, and we can use we language if we truly mean we language. Not like, well, we have tried to have me, that doesn't work. And so, really getting down there and listing out what hasn't worked because you don't want to keep trying it. Again, people always joke about the definition of insanity is trying the same thing over and over and over, hoping for a different result. You're not going to get it if the variables remain the same.
Then we finally get to move to the positive.
I know, brainstorm. Now, if you're not familiar with brainstorming, let me just give a very high level. And the idea of brainstorming is you're going to come up with new ideas. Underline new if you're taking notes. If you're not taking notes, write down new. That's important. You're not going to try the same things over and over. There are no bad ideas in this phase. You want to be thinking outside of the box. You want to be going places you may never have gone before. And it's amazing where people will end up going to because they're getting outside of that box of tradition.
It's fun. There's a reason brainstorming has been a tried and true process in business and in relationships for a long time.
And there's a reason why we're telling you to brainstorm at least 10. I'm amazed. In fact, we did a workshop very recently that every couple that was there got stuck on 9. And they're like, we can't come up with the 10th. And so we worked with them to come up with that 10th solution possibility. And it was outside of the box. And they really, though, there were a couple of the couples that really looked at it and said, man, maybe this is one of the ones we need to build on. And this is not a well-formed thought. We're not saying, so here's my treatise on this first option. It's a simple, here's what I think, here's what I think, here's what I think. And you're going to go down and do that. And then you're going to whittle down those 10 after you get to the initial 10.
You can only choose one to move forward with. So you want to break it down to that. It could be that you talk through each of the 10 and kind of weigh the pros and cons, knock out a few of them. Or if you both had 2 or 3 in common, you could just each cross out one and say, I don't want to do that one first. But you're going to get one that you both agree to try, keeping in mind that if it works, great. If it doesn't work, you can come back to this list and come back with another one. But you're going to choose this one solution to try. And then you're going to make that time bound by saying, how long are we going to try this until we come back and talk about it and see if it's working or not working. And this is where we see one of the major downfalls is that people say, yep, we're going to do this now. and they go off and do it, and then it's not working very well, or it works for a while and then kind of drift off. And there's not that come back and assess what worked and what didn't work about that. How can we tweak it to be effective? Instead, we just let our goals drift away. We don't want you to do that. So make it time bound.
Yeah, and that's one of the things too of how cool is it that you have a list. So if it doesn't work, knowing that it doesn't work, come back and try a different thing. And then by that, you're able to go back then and have another follow-up. And then you're going to keep doing this to see, is the solution working? And realizing this may be a solution for now, but it may not be a long-term solution. And so if the solution for the budget is we're going to eat beans and rice for the next 10 years, probably not a great long-term solution, but it sure could be a great short-term solution.
Twitchy just hearing that.
It could be, hey, for the next several months or until we get to a better financial place. So coming up with a solution that's manageable and is time-bound is one of the keys. So now you have the steps to conflict dialogue. We want you to try it out to see how well it's going to work for you, but realize this is a process and this is a learned skill. The more you do it, the easier it gets.
Yeah, try it out.